This is Tarheel Talk, an in-depth look at the issues and people making news in North Carolina. Here's your host, Sonia Williams.
NC Women United is a coalition of organizations working for the political, social, and economic equality of all women across North Carolina. The coalition advocates for women's issues and helps shape public policy. And joining me now to tell us more about NC Women United is its president, Tara Romano. Tara, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having us.
NC Women United has a history of advocating for women across the entire state. Give us some history on the organization and how it all came about and how it's evolved over the years.
Well, NC Women United came about in the late 80s. There were organizations across the state that were doing work on policy issues that were affecting women and families across the state, and their concern was that women's voices really weren't being heard at the policy table. Women's experiences, their needs just were not being heard, partly because the General Assembly at that time was mostly men, and still actually is, it's only 25% women at the moment as well, less than that. So the idea was to try and figure out a way to bring women's voices into advocacy around these policy issues. And part of it was that women were had been kind of socialized to think that politics wasn't a field where that they should be doing anything about. Like that was something that men did, it was something that elected officials did, it wasn't something that women who were not in that field really had any part of. So some of these organizations brought together about 200 women to Meredith College to have what they called a women's agenda assembly, to get women they wanted to talk to women about these policy issues, about how advocacy, how policy is created at the General Assembly, how their voices can be a part of that, and also then to hear what women felt was important to them. You know, what issues that maybe weren't being addressed by the General Assembly but had policy solutions to them could be something that people, they could bring to the General Assembly.
So this organization that started really grassroots efforts of educating women about public policy and how the legislature works. Now it's evolved into this very well-oiled machine, so to speak, across the state. Talk a little bit about the workings of NC Women United.
Well, NC Women United is a coalition of member organizations, and we have over 30 members, and they focus on a lot of different issues. And what we as an umbrella organization do is we take our members provide us expertise on a lot of different policy issues like violence against women, access to health care, civic participation and equality, and economic self-sufficiency are some of our big areas. And so what they do is they are paying attention to and have the expertise on a lot of issues like tax issues or issues around access to health care or issues around crisis services. And so they have that expertise. They provide it to NC Women United in the form of our agenda, and we take it and we put it into this broad-based agenda that talks about all the issues, gives details on these issues, and then we also put the issues together. Like we sort of try to provide a gender lens to a lot of these policy issues. We can talk about, Democracy NC is one of our members, and they do voting rights, and we can talk about how there are issues unique to women when it comes to voting rights. For example, women maybe, if you cut down on the number of days of early voting and also the sites, and you potentially have longer lines, women are caretakers, which they primarily, they're primary caretakers, and they have young children or they have aging parents that they have to take care of. It's a little harder for them to maybe plan their time to have to stand in line. So trying to put those kind of lenses on these issues so that people understand how they affect women uniquely and or directly. And then also, we like to talk about how the issues intersect as well. For example, if you have concerns about domestic violence victims and survivors and ways that we can support them, we would like to talk about Medicaid expansion as well, or unemployment insurance, because a reason, of course, that plenty of victims stay with their abusers is that they have their health care through that abuser, or they cannot afford to leave. So we want to try and talk about how these things intersect as well, to show that it really is going to be more effective if we look at these things as a whole. So that's what I think our strength is as a coalition, is we get all these separate issues and then we can put them together to sort of show what the whole picture is for North Carolina women.
And that whole picture comes in the form of your legislative agenda.
Right. And our agenda is big. It's got a lot of stuff on it, and there's still plenty of stuff on there. I think that, especially now as the session is really getting going, and the Senate filing deadline was last week, and I think the House is coming up, so there's a lot of bills being filed. So we'll probably have some addendums that we put out on our website about it, but yeah, it all comes together to sort of create this picture. And it's nice to have, we like the idea of having, this document that you can look at and glance over, sort of see how things are put together, and then you've got this information, and you don't need to be an expert to go talk to your legislators. You just need to have an idea of what the bills are and what the issues are and how you feel about them. And so we like to think that this provides a nice summary for that.
Absolutely. And we're going to hear more details about the agenda a bit later in the show, but I want to take this opportunity to talk about some of the successes, some of the impact on legislation that NC Women United has had over the years that people may not realize. Well,
over the years, I mean, there have been, I think, sometimes, I will go a couple years back. For a while, North Carolina had comprehensive sex education in schools, and then around year 2000, they switched to abstinence only. And so we had a lot of coalition partners and this included partners who were working around violence against women, as well as LGBT groups, as well as the healthcare groups, working on trying to make sure that students in schools had appropriate, comprehensive, accurate sex education. And so a couple years ago, it was probably maybe around 2012, I think they passed the Healthy Youth Act. And that was something that we felt like a lot of our coalition partners had worked on. And that was something that it took, and it was, quite a bit of advocacy around it. I talked to a lot of people who had a lot of concerns about it, but we sort of tried to come with all these different angles, like how do you want to talk to kids about sexual assault? You need to make sure they understand a whole bunch of things around sex ed and those kind of things.
So how can people find out more information about NC Women United and get involved with your organization?
Well, we have our website. It's ncwu.org. We also have, and on there we have our Advocacy Day, we have our registration. We also have a presence on social media. We have our Facebook and our Twitter as well, at NCWU for our Twitter. And so there are a lot of ways to get involved. And I think actually our Advocacy Day is a great way to get involved, because you also are going to meet a lot of our member organizations, because they'll be at the event as well. And you can sort of see if maybe there's an issue that really resonates with you and you would like to volunteer around that issue. Our members have opportunities for that.
And it's important to note that you're getting information and feedback from organizations all over the state. So this legislative agenda and the work that you're doing is representative of women across North Carolina.
Well, that's what we try to do. And, I do think that people probably in other parts of the state look at a lot of our organizations are headquartered in the Triangle area, because that's where the General Assembly is. And so that's, they want that access. But they do have their chapters and members across the state, because people in Fayetteville are going to have different issues than people in the mountains. And we want also women to, when they talk to their local reps, to meet other women and say, here are some issues specific to us. We would like to bring them, we now have a network of people that we know through NC Women United that we can go and advocate locally with our reps about some local issues.
Right. So definitely opportunities for people to get involved and have their voices heard.
Absolutely.
Tara Romano, thank you so much. You're the president of NC Women United. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, how you can get involved in the legislative process. We'll explain when Tarheel Talk continues. Today's show focuses on a coalition of organizations and individuals working for the full political, social, and economic equality of all women in our state. And here's an opportunity for you to get involved. NC Women United is hosting Women's Advocacy Day on Tuesday, April 21st from 9:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. A portion of that day will be spent at the State Legislative Building in downtown Raleigh. And to register for the event, go to ncwu.org/WAD 2015. And joining me now to tell us more about this event are the Directors of Policy for the organization, Emma Akpan and Felicia Willems. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
April 21st is going to be a big day in downtown Raleigh. Tell us a little bit about this year's Women's Advocacy Day and what people can expect.
Well, we're going to spend a couple hours training people on how to lobby. I know a lot of people might feel nervous about it, but it's just like talking to people in your community. We're going to have a really great guest speaker. Her name is Dream Hampton. I know Felicia is going to say more about her. And then we're going to schedule appointments for people to go meet with their legislator or different legislators that can have time to meet to talk about the issues.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit, before we talk about the guest speaker, about some of the issues on this year's legislative agenda. What are some of the major issues that you'll be discussing?
Well, we have four major areas. We have education, economic development, women's health, and what's the last one?
We'll think of it eventually. We'll think of it as we talk. But the important thing is that you'll be talking about issues. You have talking points for people, information, and like you said, at the beginning of the day, there will be a training session, so people don't need to feel intimidated about talking to lawmakers because you really help to make it easy for them.
Yep, and in the morning we are going to have about an hour and a half of training, as well as our keynote speaker. And during the training, they're going to learn about the nuts and bolts basics of advocacy, how to sit down with a lawmaker, what to talk about with them, what to say, what not to say, and just kind of learn what it's like to be a citizen advocate at the legislature. We're going to be covering topics like Medicaid expansion, economic security for women. We'll talk about the earned income tax credit and some of the other really key issues for women's economic security, like paid sick days, affordable child care. And then our keynote speaker is Dream Hampton. She's a writer and cultural critic, and she's going to be flying in to give us a really good speech about why it's important for women to get involved in the advocacy process and the legislative process.
Right, and that was going to be my next question. Why is it so important to have this Women's Advocacy Day and have women from across the state come to Raleigh and advocate for various issues?
Well, women are really underrepresented in our government, especially in the state government, and they need to hear from us. Our legislators work for us. We voted for them, and they do things for our community. So a lot of times they're so far removed from the process is that they don't hear from us enough. So if we can get some women getting in there, telling their personal stories about how they're going without health insurance, how they don't, how they're not making equal pay, how the earned income tax credit has helped them in the past and how it's hurting them now that it's not there anymore, then maybe they can relate to women more and pass policies that help us.
Right. So you're really going to help the everyday woman, if you will, craft her story so that she can share that with lawmakers and really show how legislation is making an impact on day-to-day lives.
Yeah, part of the training will be talking about your personal story and encouraging members to come and share their personal story, because that's where the legislators really connect with us. They don't want to hear facts and figures. They want to hear the stories of real people, like like women all over the state.
Absolutely. Now, you talk about the training that's going to take place in the morning, and can you give us a few tips, like what it's like to be an advocate and how to advocate for a particular issue? What types of tips do you share with people before they head to the General Assembly?
I think the main thing is just to be yourself and understand that your lawmaker is a person just like anybody else. The vast majority of the lawmakers there are there to serve their constituents and the people in their districts. And so I found that sitting down across from lawmakers, it's very easy and just comfortable to be able to sit down and really talk to them about an issue. They don't expect you to be a policy expert. We're not necessarily all policy experts on all of the issues that the women's agenda covers, but it's very important to just be yourself and sit down and kind of speak from the heart with your lawmaker and let them know what you're concerned about in your communities.
I mean, you talk about some of the major issues that you'll be talking with lawmakers about on April 21st. You mentioned the earned income tax credit and how that's no longer available. Talk a little bit about what you're hearing from women about how that's impacting them and what you want lawmakers to know about that particular issue.
Well, we can all understand missing a little money, extra money from our paycheck. I mean,
yes.
For even if it's just $100, it could really help stretch the family budget, buy more groceries, pay the light bill, and all that stuff. So, yeah, missing the extra $100 or $125 is really hurting women across the state because, you know, we don't make this equal pay as men in the state, and we're the ones buying the groceries and buying the household products and taking care of the children. So it's really important for women to have the income that we need to take care of our families.
Absolutely. I know that there are some issues around domestic violence against women that you also want to.
That was the last one.
That was one. I told you we would remember it at some point. Let's talk a little bit about some of the policies that you'd like to address this legislative session relating to domestic violence and violence against women.
Well, one of the key ones is to include same-sex couples under the domestic violence laws. That right now that's not included. Another one is to increase the penalties for when a crime is committed in front of a minor, to really discourage that from happening. There's a few others in our legislative agenda.
I think I remember reading about something about gun laws and maybe tightening the restrictions there.
Right now, it's perfectly legal for somebody who's been charged with misdemeanor domestic violence to still have a firearm. And we've seen from statistics across the country that if you commit domestic violence and you own a firearm, it's far more likely that for somebody to get injured or killed with that firearm.
Definitely important policies that need to be addressed this legislative session, and this event will certainly provide a voice for many women across the state. How can people get involved with this event?
Well, you can start by signing up on our website. It's www.ncwu.com or .org. And then we have a registration under Women's Advocacy Day, and we're really encouraging people to sign up so we can have the right time for them to meet with their legislator, to make sure those legislators have time set aside to meet with you, because they're really busy, but they really do want to see us and hear from us.
So people will go to the website and register for the event, and then NC Women United will schedule the appointments with lawmakers. Is that how?
If they request for us to, absolutely. And we're going to try to be grouping people from different areas to meet with lawmakers so that nobody feels like they have to go to the office all by themselves. And especially if you've never been to the legislature. I know my first time there, I was very intimidated by the whole process, and I didn't quite know what to expect. So we're going to make sure that people feel armed with the information that they need, and that there's safety in numbers when going to talk with lawmakers, so that they don't feel like they have to do all of the talking, because I know that can be really stressful as well.
And that building, everything looks the same, so it's easy to get lost in there as well if you don't know your way around. Now, you mentioned numbers. There is strength in numbers. And I want to talk a little bit about how Women's Advocacy Day has grown over the years, because I can imagine you have a lot more participants, a lot more participation than in previous years.
Yeah, this year we're expecting almost 200 women to come, and that's up from the last time, 2 years ago. And our numbers are coming from the signups from the last Advocacy Day. They got canceled because of the snow.
Right. Originally, this was scheduled for February, and then we had the snow.
So luckily, we were able to reschedule it. So we're encouraging women that signed up before to sign up again, and we're encouraging them to bring their friends and neighbors and make sure that we're that women are being heard at the legislature.
Absolutely.
And I think what's actually extra important this year is that there's so many women who can't make it to Raleigh to be at the legislature. And so we're doing a very strong social media push as well. We're going to be tweeting all day long with hashtag NC Women United, because that's not only the name of our organization, but also the theme of the day is that women in North Carolina are united on these issues, and that we want our voices to be heard. So people, if they can't make it to Raleigh, can go and follow along on Twitter and on Facebook at hashtag NC Women United.
Definitely ways to get involved if you can't actually be there.
Yep.
We're going to take a break. We'll talk more in just a minute.
Okay.
We'll be back with more on NC Women United after these messages. Welcome back to Tarheel Talk. I'm Sonia Williams. My guests today are with NC Women United, a group of organizations and individuals working for the full equality for all women across North Carolina. With us again are the directors of policy for the organization, Emma Akpan and Felicia Willems. It's a pleasure having you both with us. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about some of the major issues that will be discussed on April 21st during Women's Advocacy Day. And I know that one of those issues is Medicaid and the expansion of Medicaid. Emma, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the federal government has set aside money for the state of North Carolina to help more people get health insurance. And we haven't accepted it. So we're leaving tax dollars on the table right now. And we're really encouraging the governor and our legislators to get more people covered, to help people get more health insurance. Because as we know, when you don't have health insurance, you don't have healthy communities.
Right. And I think that's been a point of contention at the legislature. You mentioned the governor being very vocal about not wanting to expand Medicaid here in North Carolina. And we have missed some money because of that, some federal dollars. So that definitely is making an impact on people across the state.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen with other states across the country such a strong economic impact that it's had for their states. And these aren't all just blue states, it's Arkansas and Kentucky who are bringing all of the federal dollars into their communities. They're seeing boosts in their economy. People are getting covered. Their percentage, their rate of uninsured is at record lows. It's been a huge boon for the citizens of their states, and we want that here in our state too, because we care about our people and their health.
Right. So that will be a major talking point on April 21st. What's the message to lawmakers?
Expand Medicaid and do it now.
Okay, direct and to the point.
Yes.
Now, give people the details on Women's Advocacy Day. We know it's going to take place on Tuesday, April 21st. Tell us what they can expect.
What you can expect on Tuesday is we'll begin at 9 o'clock with registration, and we're meeting at a church. It's the First Baptist Church on Wilmington Street, and we'll spend about an hour and a half there training you and getting people pumped up to get ready to lobby. And then then we'll all walk over to the legislative building, and you'll have your several appointments with your legislator after that. And we'll end around 2 o'clock.
And while we're at the legislature, there in the 1000 court, a bunch of our different member organizations are going to have information tables set up to both talk to the attendees of Women's Advocacy Day and any lawmakers that may be wandering by and wondering what they're all about. And so it'll be a great opportunity for attendees to get to know some of the organizations that are behind Women's Advocacy Day as well.
And learn more about issues beyond what they're personally interested in, but other issues that are impacting women and families across the state.
Absolutely. And you know what we see in our work is that there's not one issue that doesn't affect, that lives in a vacuum, that all of the issues really cross over. Medicaid expansion crosses over to the EITC. If you can't afford health insurance, how can you afford that extra few $100s a year that is coming out of your paycheck? And child care, paid sick days, paid family leave. All of these issues really cross over, and so it's great for people who attend to be able to see how they intersect.
I know it's called Women's Advocacy Day, but it's important to have some men participate as well. So what's the message to get men out there and involved?
Well, we have a lot of strong men volunteers already, so men are already involved. And if you're a man, you probably have some type of relationship with a woman, whether it's your daughter, your mother, your sister, your wife. And these issues affect us. We know that women are increasingly becoming breadwinners in our families, and that even if they're not the breadwinners, the extra income is really helpful. So economic issues for women is economic issues for men and families.
Absolutely. And people can find out more by going to NCWU.org, and they can find out more about the organization and how to register for the event. Emma Akpan and Felicia Willems, thank you both so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank
you so much.
That's it for this week's Tar Heel Talk. To comment on this or other episodes of the show, send us a message on our Facebook page or an email to tarheeltalk@fox50.com. I'm Sonia Williams. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week.